It was something colder, sharper. I walked toward the front door, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I pushed it open, there she was, Brianna, standing in the kitchen wearing my favorite quilted apron, the one I handcrafted nearly 12 years ago. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, hey, Evelyn," she said with a fake smile turned smirk. "Ryan told us we could use the place whenever. You barely come here anyway." People began appearing behind her, Tessa holding a phone like she was ready to vlog the drama, Brianna's nephews running around with muddy shoes, an older man in a faded Hawaiian shirt cracking open another beer, and a smoking stranger leaning on my counter like he paid rent here. They stared at me like I was the intruder. "I want to talk to Ryan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He's working," Brianna snapped, "unlike some people." And then, with zero shame, she said, "There's no room for you here. We've taken all the bedrooms. You'll just complicate things." Something inside me cracked, but not in the way she expected. It wasn't defeat. Because at that moment, Brianna made the biggest mistake of her life, underestimating me. But if Brianna thought kicking me out of my own home was bold, she had no idea what she had already set in motion. I walked back to my car with my dignity barely hanging on, but my spirit burning hotter than it had in years. The slam of the car door echoed in my ears as I sat there gripping the steering wheel. I stared at my cottage, my sanctuary, now overrun with strangers acting like they owned every inch of it. I should have been going inside to unpack groceries, maybe open the windows to let the ocean breeze roll in. Instead, I was backing out of my own driveway like some unwelcome guest. I drove toward town, my mind racing through memories I hadn't touched in decades. 23 years earlier, when Ryan was still in his early 20s, he and I had walked the very coastline where my cottage now sat. Back then, the land was nothing but rough dirt, crabgrass, and a half-collapsed shed. But to me, it looked like a fresh start. "Mom, you sure you want to take this on?" Ryan had asked, hands in his pockets, half smiling and half worried. I was sure then, and I'm still sure now. That cottage was built from sweat, grief, and the stubborn belief that I deserved one piece of peaceful earth to call mine. So why did I end up driving to a cheap roadside motel instead of sleeping in the bed I paid for myself? That night, the motel room smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the peeling wallpaper. My chest felt tight, not from sadness, but from a cold, laser-focused determination I hadn't felt since the early days after losing my husband. I poured myself a cup of burnt motel coffee the next morning, hoping maybe, just maybe, everything at the cottage would be calmer. Maybe Ryan would show up and talk sense into his wife. Maybe they'd apologize. Maybe this whole thing was just one awful misunderstanding. But the moment I walked up to my front door again, I knew nothing had changed. The door was locked, from the inside. I had to ring the bell of my own home. This time, Tessa answered. She wore pajamas, a messy bun, and an attitude so sour I could practically taste it. "What now?" she groaned. I swallowed my pride. "I need to grab some of my personal things." She rolled her eyes. "Fine, go ahead, but make it quick. Brianna's sleeping." As she stepped aside, a foul mix of greasy food, cigarette smoke, and cheap cologne slapped me in the face. My cozy cottage now smelled like a frat house basement. I walked through the living room and my heart just dropped. Air mattresses everywhere, clothes hanging off lamps, bottles rolling on the floor. My home had been trashed, and that was just the beginning. Because the deeper I walked into my own house, the clearer it became. This wasn't just disrespect. This was something far more sinister. The deeper I stepped into the cottage, the more my stomach twisted. Every corner I passed looked like it had been hit by a tornado of disrespect. The kitchen, the one I designed myself, the one I dreamed about while stitching quilts late into the night, was a complete disaster zone. Grease stains smeared across the counters. The sink overflowed with crusty plates. Pots I treasured were scorched black, like someone tried to cook on high heat and walked away for an hour. But the real punch to the gut came when I noticed something missing. My porcelain dish set, the one I saved up for by selling quilts at winter markets. "Where are my dishes?" I asked Tessa, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged, not even looking at me. "Oh, those? The kids broke them yesterday. They were playing soccer inside. Brianna said they looked old anyway." Old. The disrespect hit harder than the loss itself. I swallowed my anger and climbed the stairs. What I saw next nearly knocked the wind out of me. Brianna's mother, wearing my robe, was standing in my closet, folding clothes that weren't hers. I forced myself to stay calm. "Excuse me, this is my room." "Oh, relax, Evelyn," she said with a smug smile. "Brianna told me to organize your stuff. I already put everything in bags so it won't wrinkle." I looked behind her. My dresses, blouses, jackets shoved into cheap plastic garbage bags like thrift store donations. Two strangers were sleeping in my bed, snoring, drooling, using my embroidered pillows as if they bought them. I stepped out of the room, feeling nauseous. But when I noticed the small cabinet in the corner, the one where I kept important papers, family keepsakes, and the jewelry my mother left me, a cold dread crawled up my spine. The cabinet door was cracked open. I rushed to it and nearly collapsed. Everything had been ransacked. Papers scattered. Envelopes torn open. My grandmother's locket? Gone. My mother's pearl earrings? Missing. My late husband's antique watch? Gone too. But the worst part wasn't what they stole. It was what I found. Tucked inside the mess were documents that didn't belong to me. Legal forms with Ryan's and Brianna's names printed boldly across the top. A property transfer request. A medical statement claiming I was mentally unfit to manage assets. My blood ran ice cold. "How long has this been planned?" I whispered to myself. The papers were dated a week earlier. This wasn't an impulsive takeover. This was a plot, a setup, a betrayal. And it wasn't just Brianna. Ryan was involved too. But even then, standing in the ruins of my own belongings, I hadn't seen the darkest part of their plan. Not yet. I stood there gripping those forged documents, my hands shaking, but not from fear, from clarity, from the cold realization that this wasn't about a misunderstanding or some spontaneous family gathering gone wild. This was calculated, organized, signed, prepared. As if on cue, I heard Brianna's voice drifting in through the open window. She was outside on the phone, speaking loud enough for the whole block to hear. Typical Brianna. She never learned how to keep anything quiet. "No, Mom, it's fine," she said with a laugh that made my skin crawl. "The lawyer said it's easy. Ryan can file for early inheritance since Evelyn's basically too old to manage property. She should have handed it over years ago." Too old? Early inheritance? My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "And the medical report?" "Yeah, that part's already handled," she continued casually. "That cheap clinic doctor signed off on everything. $50 and he didn't even look twice. It's perfect. Once the court sees she's mentally slipping, the house automatically goes to Ryan. And then, boom, we sell it, clear the debts, get the kids into better schools." My vision blurred for a moment. Not from tears, from pure disbelief that my own flesh and blood would do this. Ryan knew. He agreed. He participated. The boy I raised alone after my husband died. The one I stayed up late sewing quilts to support. The same boy I defended against every bully in middle school. He was now trying to have me declared incompetent. All for a house. I held the documents tighter, something inside me hardening like stone. This wasn't a family argument. This wasn't a conflict. This was fraud. This was theft. This was betrayal from the people who should have been protecting me. I slipped the papers quietly into my bag, careful not to draw attention. I didn't trust anyone in that house. Not the adults, not the teens, not even the little ones running around unsupervised. They had all been raised to believe that my home was some kind of free vacation spot. As I walked down the stairs, I caught Tessa smirking from the couch, scrolling through her phone, like she was editing footage from her latest family takeover video. "Owing somewhere, Evelyn?" she asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. I didn't respond. I didn't owe her a single breath. I walked straight out of the door, my head held high, even though everything inside me felt shattered. By the time I reached my car, the cold determination from the motel had fully returned. This wasn't over, not even close. And they had no idea what storm they had just unleashed, because the moment I stepped away from that cottage, I knew exactly what my next move would be, and it was something they would never see coming. I drove straight to town, the documents burning a hole in my bag like they were made of fire. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight the veins stood out, but my mind had never been clearer. If they wanted to play dirty, I would play smart. My first stop was the bank. I'd been a customer there for nearly 16 years, and the branch manager, Mr. Whitaker, always treated me with the respect people my age rarely get anymore. As soon as I walked in, he smiled warmly. "Mrs. Carter, what brings you in today?" I took a deep breath. I need the exact balance of every account under my name, and I need to put some security measures in place. His smile faded. "Is everything all right?" "Not exactly," I said, "but it will be." He typed at his computer for a few minutes before turning the screen toward me. My savings, CDs, and checking totaled just under $116,000. A storm of betrayal swirled in my heart, but seeing that number gave me a strange sense of calm. It reminded me just how long I'd been preparing for situations like this. Ryan and Brianna thought I had nothing. They thought I was some fragile, clueless old lady living check to check. They had no idea I'd spent decades tucking away every extra dollar from quilt sales, craft fairs, and holiday orders. Money isn't everything, but it's fuel when you need to fight. "I want to block any unauthorized access," I told Mr. Whitaker, "and I need written proof that I'm mentally competent to manage my finances." His brows lifted. "Competent? Mrs. Carter, you've been one of the sharpest clients I've ever overseen. Did someone imply otherwise?" I slid the forged papers across his desk. His expression hardened instantly. "This is very serious," he said. "Do you need an attorney?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. He gave me a card for attorney Lucas Hargrove, a respected family law expert known for dealing with fraud and elder financial abuse. Within minutes of leaving the bank, I called the number. His assistant booked me an appointment for that same afternoon. By 4 p.m., I was sitting in Lucas's office, handing him the stack of evidence. He listened without interrupting, his face slowly shifting from focus to disbelief to anger on my behalf. "Mrs. Carter," he said once I finished, "your case is very strong. What your son and daughter-in-law attempted is not just unethical, it's criminal. We're talking about forgery, financial exploitation, property fraud, and falsified medical records. I can file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning." I exhaled shakily. "How much will this cost?" $2,600, he replied, "flat fee. I can pay it today." He blinked, impressed. "Good, then tomorrow we begin." Little did Ryan and Brianna know, their plan was about to crumble faster than they ever imagined, and I was the one lighting the fuse. The next morning came too slowly and too fast all at once. I barely slept, lying awake in the motel bed as the dim hallway lights flickered through the curtains. My mind replayed every word I'd heard Brianna say, every insult, every plan, every lie. But when my alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m., I sat up with a steadiness I hadn't felt in days. Today was the day everything shifted. By 8 a.m., I met Attorney Hargrove outside the courthouse. He looked sharp and confident, carrying a briefcase stuffed with legal documents he'd prepared overnight. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the moment they called me incompetent," I replied. Inside, we filed an emergency injunction, a petition for eviction due to unlawful occupation, a police report for theft, and a notice to investigate the clinic doctor who signed the bogus medical form. Lucas flipped through the papers quickly, showing me where to initial and sign. "Everything here," he explained, "builds a wall they can't climb. Once the injunction is approved, they won't be able to touch your property, your finances, or your legal status." I nodded, my chest tightening with a mixture of relief and sorrow. As soon as the filings were submitted, Lucas turned to me and said, "We head to the property next. The officer and notary will meet us there." My breath caught. This was really happening. We drove separately, but I followed close behind. The highway looked different this morning, like I wasn't running from something anymore. I was heading straight toward the fight. When we reached the cottage, the scene was almost comical. Brianna's family was gathered on the porch eating breakfast. Pastries, sausage links, iced coffees from town. They were lounging like they were on some vacation getaway. That's when they saw the police car parked behind Lucas's sedan. Tessa's iced coffee nearly slipped out of her hand. The old man in the Hawaiian shirt squinted like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Brianna came stumbling out the door wearing one of my cardigans, her face pale as skim milk. The officer stepped forward. "Are you Mrs. Brianna Carter?" She blinked. "Yes. Why?" "You and your accompanying family members are being served with an emergency eviction order for unlawful occupation of private property belonging to Mrs. Evelyn Carter." I will never forget the look on her face. It was the moment she realized her little scheme had just blown up in her hands. No. This must be a mistake," Brianna stammered. Ryan said, "Your husband's being summoned separately," Lucas cut in. "And as of this moment, you have 2 hours to vacate this property." The entire porch went silent. But the real chaos didn't start until Ryan pulled into the driveway and saw exactly what he had to answer for. Ryan's car screeched into the driveway like he was racing the truth itself. He must have gotten a frantic call from Brianna, because he jumped out before the engine even finished rumbling, his tie crooked and his face flushed. "What's going on?" he demanded, eyes darting from the officer to Lucas to me. The officer didn't hesitate. "Mr. Carter, you're being served with a court summons for participating in attempted property fraud, aiding in document forgery, and involvement in the unlawful occupation of this residence." Ryan's jaw practically hit the pavement. "What? Fraud? No, this isn't. Mom, what is happening?" He sounded like a guilty man pretending to be confused. I didn't flinch. "What's happening," I said quietly, "is that you finally have to answer for what you tried to do to me." Brianna rushed over to him, whispering fiercely, "Don't freak out. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Tell them your mom is stressed and overreacting." I couldn't believe she was still trying to spin the narrative. Lucas stepped in smoothly. "Mr. Carter, we have copies of the forged medical report, the property transfer forms, and evidence of stolen valuables. Your involvement is documented." Ryan's face went pale enough to match the storm clouds gathering overhead. "Mom, I never meant. We were just... Look, it got blown out of proportion, okay?" I stared at him. "You tried to have me labeled mentally unfit. You broke into my home. You let your wife's family trash it. And you were going to put my name on a legal death sentence while I'm still alive." He shook his head like a child caught with a broken lamp. No, Mom, you don't get it. We're drowning. Credit card debt, school fees, car loans, everything's piling up. And the house, it was just sitting here. You barely use it. So that makes it yours to steal? I asked, my voice low but steady. He winced. Mom, we're family. Family doesn't stab each other for property, I replied. Meanwhile, Brianna was panicking, pacing back and forth and clutching her forehead. Ryan, tell them your mom agreed to the transfer. Tell them we talked about it as a family. We didn't, I said, not once. The officer motioned toward the porch. Ma'am, sir, you need to start packing. You have less than 2 hours left. That's when the meltdown began. Tessa started yelling at Brianna. Brianna yelled at Ryan. The older man cursed at the officer. The younger cousins stomped inside, grabbing random items, even stuff that wasn't theirs, until the officer barked at them to stop. Ryan finally looked at me again, eyes glossy. Mom, can we talk privately? Please? I stepped back. We'll talk. In court. His face fell like he'd been punched. But just when I thought I'd seen the limits of their nerve, Brianna hurled one sentence at me that proved their cruelty had no bottom. The countdown had barely begun, and emotions were already unraveling like a cheap sweater. Suitcases thumped down the stairs. Kids cried. Brianna's mother stomped around shouting about ungrateful elders. The whole chaotic scene would have been almost funny if it wasn't my life they were tearing apart. I stood near the porch railing, watching the mess unfold, when Brianna spun toward me with wild eyes. You're heartless, Evelyn, she snapped. Completely heartless. You're kicking out kids, your own grandkids, because you're selfish. I stared at her evenly. Those kids aren't the problem. Their parents are. She scoffed. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. You want everyone to pity you, but guess what? You're just a bitter old woman who hates sharing. I raised a brow. Sharing means agreeing, not being forcibly robbed. Brianna wasn't done. She stepped closer, her face twisted with rage. You don't need a house this size. You're almost 70. You should be downsizing. Let younger families use it. You had your time. Her words sliced through the air, cold and sharp. Before I could respond, Lucas cut in. Ma'am, this age-based harassment is now officially being added to the record as elder discrimination. She blinked. Elder what? Discrimination, he repeated. Every word you say is being documented. Brianna froze for a moment, then turned to Ryan, furious. You said your mom wouldn't fight us. You said she was too emotional to do anything. Stop yelling at me, Ryan snapped. You're the one who said the doctor was legit. Oh, please, you agreed to it, she fired back. Their voices escalated, each blaming the other, as if pointing fingers could erase the documents we'd already filed. Tessa filmed it all from the steps, muttering about content for her channel. The officer stepped in. Let's keep moving. 90 minutes left. That lit another fire under Brianna. She stomped inside, dragging trash bags stuffed with clothes, shouting at everyone to move faster. Then in the doorway, she turned back to me and hissed, This isn't over, Evelyn. You think you've won? We'll appeal. We'll tell the court you're delusional. You can't stop us. I didn't even blink. Try it, I said calmly. My lawyer will be waiting for you. Her mouth opened to yell something else, but the officer interrupted sharply. Ma'am, you need to continue packing. As she stalked away, muttering curses, Ryan lingered near the driveway. He looked exhausted, guilt, shame, fear, all mixing on his face. Mom, he started softly. If you'd just let us stay temporarily, none of this would have happened. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the boy I raised, but a man who let greed win. You didn't ask to stay, I said. You planned to take. He dropped his gaze like he finally understood the difference. But their chaos was nothing compared to what came next, when the clock ran out and the officer made a discovery that stunned everyone. The officer's voice cut through the chaos again. All right, folks, 1 hour left. You'd think that would push everyone into full speed mode, but instead, it made the tension explode. Brianna's nephews started arguing over who packed what. Tessa yelled that someone stole her charger. and Brianna's mother kept sighing dramatically like she was the real victim. Meanwhile, the officer and notary moved through the house to verify what belonged to whom. That's when things took a turn. I was standing in the doorway of the living room when I heard the officer call out, "Ma'am, could you come here a moment?" My stomach tightened. "Yes, officer." He pointed toward a pile of belongings they had stacked by the hallway. "Are these items yours?" I stepped closer and my heart stopped. There, sitting on top of the pile, were my mother's pearl earrings, the ones Brianna claimed were lost. Next to them was my grandmother's locket, then my husband's antique watch, tucked inside someone's gym bag, and beside that, my wedding band from decades ago. I felt the air leave my lungs. These were found mixed into bags belonging to Brianna's mother and one of the teenagers, the officer said sternly. They claimed they didn't know how they got there. "Oh, please," Brianna's mother blurted out from the kitchen doorway. "We thought they were souvenirs. They were just lying around." I turned slowly. "In a locked cabinet?" Her face twitched. Lucas stepped beside me. "Officer, please add attempted theft to the official report. These items were hidden, not misplaced." Brianna threw her hands up. "Oh my God, are you serious? Mom probably thought they were costume jewelry." The officer lifted a brow. "Funny, considering the watch alone is worth over $2,000. The room went silent. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes completely. "Mom, I swear I didn't know about this part." I didn't bother responding. Some lies aren't worth the oxygen. The officer continued searching and eventually found more of my things shoved into a duffel bag under the teen's air mattress. Photo frames, silver coins, old letters, a small quilt I'd made for Ryan when he was 5. Every item felt like a dagger. "Mrs. Carter," the officer said gently, "we'll catalog everything and return it directly to you." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. I never imagined I'd watch strangers sift through stolen pieces of my life while my own son stood there in silence. The anger I felt wasn't loud. It wasn't shouting or screaming. It was the kind that settled deep, the kind that changes you forever, the kind that makes you see the world clearly for the first time. But the most shocking moment came when the officer opened one last drawer, revealing something that shattered any hope I had left for Ryan's innocence. The officer called me over again, his expression tighter this time. Something about the way he stood, stiff, serious, made my stomach twist. "Mrs. Carter," he said, lowering his voice, "we found additional documents in a drawer in the upstairs guest room. You should see this." I followed him up the stairs, feeling every step like a weight pressing into my chest. At the top, he gestured to a small wooden drawer pulled out from a nightstand. Inside were several papers, neatly stacked, clipped together, tucked under what looked like a teen's pile of junk. But when I saw the top page, my entire body went still. It was a petition for guardianship, filed in my son's handwriting, with a signature line already forged with my name. My heart thudded painfully. Ryan had tried to become my legal guardian, a move that would have stripped me of every right I had. Control over my money, my property, my medical decisions, my life. The officer carefully lifted the next page, a blank check from my personal checkbook, already signed, forged. Then another, and another, 3 checks, all ready to drain me dry. A coldness spread through my chest. He was going to take everything, I whispered. Lucas stepped closer, his tone calm but firm. "This is serious exploitation, Mrs. Carter. This is beyond just property fraud. This shows intent to control your finances entirely." I swallowed hard, the betrayal settling deeper. Ryan hadn't just gone along with Brianna's plan. He'd escalated it. The officer exhaled sharply. "We'll be adding financial abuse and attempted identity fraud to the case." Downstairs, I heard Brianna yelling something about losing her favorite beach bag, completely oblivious to the enormity of what had just been uncovered. I stared at the papers again, my vision blurring, not from tears, but disbelief. I raised that boy, fed him, protected him, sacrificed everything for him, and he was preparing to legally declare me incapable so he could take every dollar I'd ever saved. Lucas placed a steady hand on the edge of the nightstand. These documents, they make your case nearly bulletproof. You're going to be okay, Evelyn. But I didn't feel okay yet. Not when the truth kept cutting deeper with every revelation. We walked downstairs, and everything suddenly felt louder. Brianna's arguing, Tessa's whining, kids fighting over toys, drawers slamming. Chaos everywhere. Ryan stood in the living room, head down, hands on his hips like he was carrying the weight of the world. When he saw my face, he straightened. "Mom, why do you look like that? What now?" I held up the forged guardianship papers. He went white. "Mom, wait, it's not what it looks like." "Oh, Ryan," I said softly, "it's exactly what it looks like." His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a man who just realized his sins had finally caught up to him. But before Ryan could explain, or lie his way out, a knock at the front door signaled the arrival of someone who changed everything. The knock at the door wasn't loud, but it sliced through the chaos like a blade. Everyone froze. Brianna mid-yell, Tessa mid-eye roll, even the kids paused, like the air shifted. The officer stepped toward the entryway, hand resting near his belt. "Expecting anyone?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." He opened the door, and there stood a woman in her late 50s, dressed in a charcoal suit sharp enough to cut glass. Her hair was pinned back, her expression serious, but calm. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm. "Mrs. Evelyn Carter?" she asked, locking eyes with me. "Yes," I said cautiously. "That's me." She extended a business card. "My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm a representative from Adult Protective Services. We received an anonymous report regarding potential elder exploitation and financial abuse. I'm here to follow up." Silence fell so hard it practically echoed. Brianna's mother gasped. "Oh great, now the government's here," Brianna hissed. "Who would even call them?" I kept my face neutral, but the truth clicked instantly. Someone had reported what was happening. Someone who cared. Someone who had been watching. Lucas cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm the notary handling the eviction and documentation. I can confirm there is substantial evidence of attempted fraud." Margaret nodded as if she expected that answer. She portfolio and pulled out a series of forms. "Mrs. Carter, I will need to speak with you privately at some point, but first I'm required to assess the environment." The officer gestured inside. "You'll want to see this." Margaret stepped in, her professional gaze sweeping across the room. The bags, the scattered belongings, the broken lamp, the stained couch cushions, the teenage chaos, the adults arguing. The general disorder that screamed no one respected this home. Ryan swallowed hard. "Look, we don't need APS here. This is all a misunderstanding." Margaret held up a hand. "Sir, please refrain from interfering with my assessment." Brianna forced a laugh. "Assessment? Of what? Evelyn is perfectly fine. She's just being dramatic." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "According to the report, Miss Carter was being pressured to give up property, sign legal documents she did not understand, and was potentially declared mentally unfit without legitimate medical evaluation." Ryan's eyes widened. It wasn't like that." Margaret walked straight to the nightstand where the officer had set the forged guardianship papers. She read the top page. Her face hardened. "Oh, this is serious." She flipped through the forged checks, the transfer papers, the fake medical report. Each page made her expression colder. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "these are textbook signs of targeted elder exploitation. Whoever filed this report did the right tea." I felt a strange mixture of relief, grief, and humiliation wash over me. I never thought I'd live long enough for strangers to protect me from my own child. Brianna threw her hands up. "So what? She's old. She forgets stuff. People forget things all the time. Doesn't mean she's being abused." Margaret turned toward her slowly. Ma'am, I strongly advise you stop speaking. For the first time since this nightmare began, Brianna actually shut her mouth. Margaret then looked at me, steadily, kindly. Mrs. Carter, is there anything else you'd like to disclose? I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud would break something permanently. Finally, I said the words. My son tried to take everything from me. Ryan flinched like he'd been struck, but APS wasn't the only unexpected arrival that day, because 10 minutes later, someone else walked through that door who forced Ryan to face the truth he'd been avoiding for years. We were all still reeling from APS's arrival when another knock came at the door, firmer this time, more purposeful. The officer exchanged a glance with Margaret, then opened it cautiously. A man in his early 40s stepped inside, tall, well-dressed, with a face you didn't forget easily. He looked like someone who spent half his life in courtrooms and the other half cleaning up other people's messes. Mrs. Carter? He asked, scanning the room with sharp, assessing eyes. Yes, I answered, unsure. He nodded once. I'm Daniel Harper. Your neighbor down the road called me. He said something was happening here, and he thought you might need legal support. My neighbor, sweet old Mr. Jennings, the retired mailman who always waved from his porch and brought me newspaper clippings he thought I'd like. He had been the one watching. He had been the one who cared enough to act. Daniel stepped forward. I'm a probate and elder rights attorney, and from the looks of things, he eyed the forged documents still spread out on the dining table. You need representation immediately. Ryan looked like he'd swallowed a brick. Seriously? Another lawyer? You're bringing random people in now? This is harassment. Daniel ignored him. He gestured toward the papers. May I? Please. Margaret said, stepping aside. Daniel flipped through the guardianship form first, his brows pulled together. This signature isn't even close to her real handwriting. Brianna scoffed. How would you know what her handwriting looks like? Daniel didn't even glance at her. Because she signed the intake form on my tablet 2 months ago when I helped her update her will. My breath caught. He remembered me. He remembered helping me with paperwork. Ryan blinked in shock. Mom, you changed your will? Without telling me? I looked right at him. Why would I tell someone who sees me as a bank account? His face twisted. Not with guilt, this time, but with something closer to fear. Daniel continued calmly. Mrs. Carter, your updated will is valid and legally sound, and it specifically states your son is not permitted to manage your finances without your explicit consent. Brianna's mouth fell open. She said that? Are you kidding me? Daniel shot her a cool look. Ma'am, I suggest you stop commenting before you incriminate yourself further. The officer cleared his throat. We're approaching the 30-minute mark. Packing needs to continue, but no one moved. Daniel placed the forged checks next to the guardianship forms. Mrs. Carter, I want you to understand something very clearly. This isn't just a civil issue anymore. This is criminal, and if you choose to pursue charges, he looked directly at Ryan. The penalties are severe. Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, please don't. I made mistakes, okay? I didn't think it would go this far. I stared at my son, the boy with scraped knees who used to run into my sewing room asking for snacks. The teen who cried when he lost his first baseball game. The young man who promised he'd take care of me someday. Where had that boy gone? I swallowed hard. You didn't think, or you didn't care. He couldn't answer. But before Ryan could plead his case, Daniel revealed something he found buried in the forged paperwork. Something that proved this scheme had been planned long before I ever walked through that door. Daniel laid the papers flat on the dining table, smoothing them out with the kind of precision that made everyone in the room hold their breath. He flipped through the forged packet again, slower this time, scanning each margin, each date, each signature line with unnerving focus. Then he stopped. His eyes narrowed. Well, This is interesting. Ryan shifted anxiously. What? What now? Daniel tapped the corner of one of the documents. This guardianship petition. It wasn't drafted last week. He lifted the page slightly so the light caught the printer markings. This was created 3 months ago. A stunned silence fell across the room. He slid another page forward. And this fake medical evaluation, saying Mrs. Carter is showing signs of cognitive decline. Same date, same printer, same formatting. My heart dropped. 3 months ago. Back when I thought everything was fine. Back when Ryan had invited me to dinner twice in 1 week and acted strangely nervous. Daniel wasn't done. He pulled out the blank checks. And look at this. Her checkbook ledger shows these checks were torn out nearly 8 weeks ago. Whoever did this didn't panic or act impulsively. He looked straight at Ryan and Brianna. This was planned, carefully. Brianna's face drained of color. That's someone must have planted those here. Daniel raised an eyebrow. In your son's duffel bag? Ryan rubbed his temples. Mom, please, I can explain. We were just trying to figure out options. We weren't going to actually do it. Ryan, I said quietly, you forged my signature. You tried to become my legal guardian. You tore checks from my book. What part of that wasn't actually doing it? He had no answer. Just a long, trembling exhale. Even Brianna looked rattled now. Look, okay, maybe we talked about it, but Ryan felt responsible. He thought you'd need help soon. Margaret from APS stepped forward. Mrs. Carter has shown no cognitive impairment, and even if she had, coercion is illegal. Forgery is illegal. Preparing guardianship paperwork without consent is illegal. She paused, letting the words sink in. This was a coordinated effort to seize her assets. Ryan's shoulders sagged under the weight of it all, his face a pale mix of fear and defeat. Mom, I swear, I didn't want to hurt you. We were drowning. Money's tight, the kids. I held up a hand. Every family struggles, Ryan, but not every family chooses betrayal. He flinched like I'd slapped him. The officer reappeared from the hallway. 20 minutes left. Everyone needs to wrap up. But no one moved. Everyone's eyes were glued to the table, to the forged papers laid out like evidence in a crime show. Daniel exhaled. Mrs. Carter, these documents prove premeditation. If you decide to press full charges, the case is already stacked in your favor. I looked at my son, grown man, father of 2, standing there like a punished child, and wondered how I'd missed the signs. Or maybe I had seen them, and simply hoped he'd never sink this low. But before I could decide anything, Brianna made a desperate move, one so reckless, so outrageous, it turned the entire situation explosive. The second Daniel finished speaking, the room felt like it was vibrating with tension. Everyone was quiet, too quiet. Even the kids had stopped fussing. It was the kind of silence right before something snaps. And of course, Brianna was the one who broke it. She surged forward, grabbed the forged guardianship packet off the table, and screamed, "This is all lies. These papers don't mean anything." Before anyone could stop her, she tore the top page in half, then ripped the next one, then the next, shredding the entire packet like a wild animal. The officer lunged forward. "Ma'am, that is evidence in an active investigation." But Brianna was too far gone. "You can't use any of this. If it's destroyed, it doesn't count. You can't pin anything on us." Tessa shrieked, "Mom, stop. You're making it worse." Brianna hurled a handful of ripped papers across the room. "Shut up, Tessa. Nobody understands. We were supposed to get this house. We deserve this house. Evelyn is being selfish." My voice came out low. Selfish? For refusing to be robbed? She whirled on me, eyes blazing. "You think you're some saint because you made quilts and raised Ryan alone? Plenty of people have it harder than you. You should be grateful we even wanted to take care of you." Daniel stepped in, calm but deadly serious. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to stop speaking. You're incriminating yourself every second you open your mouth. Oh, go to hell, she spat, pointing right in his face. You're only here because some nosy neighbor got involved. Margaret from APS edged closer. Ma'am, you need to step aside, now. But Brianna wasn't listening. She spun toward Ryan, jabbing a finger into his chest. This is your fault. You said you could handle it. You said she'd sign anything. And now look. Ryan pushed her hand away. Don't put this all on me. You're the one who came up with half this crap. You said forged signatures were easy. The officer's voice rose. Both of you calm down, right now. Instead, Brianna grabbed her purse, yanked it open, and pulled out something that made all of us freeze. A USB drive. She waved it like a weapon. You think those stupid papers mattered? This is what mattered. This has everything. The audio recordings, the fake doctor's statement, the notes. And guess what? You're not getting it. She shoved it into her pocket and tried to bolt toward the back door. The officer was faster, much faster. He stepped forward, blocked her path, and said, Ma'am, you are detained for tampering with evidence and attempting to flee. Brianna shrieked and tried to pull away, but he held firm. The rage drained from her face, replaced with fear. No, you can't do this. Ryan, do something. But Ryan's face was blank, empty, like he finally realized just how far his wife had dragged him down, and how willing he'd been to go. But as the officer restrained Brianna, he asked her one question, and her answer exposed a secret that stunned everyone, especially Ryan. You already know, she shrieked. I didn't start this. I didn't even want to go through with it until he pushed me. She jerked her chin toward Ryan. Ryan's head snapped up. What? I never. Brianna, don't you dare turn this on me. Oh, shut up, she hissed. You're the one who asked your buddy to forge the medical report. You're the one who said your mom was slowing down and we needed to get ahead of it. You said we'd lose everything if we didn't do this. 48. The room went dead silent. Even Tessa gasped softly, phone hanging at her side. Ryan went pale. Mom, please, she's lying. You know how she gets when she's cornered. But I could see it. Every drop of guilt, every flinch, every memory lining up like pieces in a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Brianna wasn't finished. You said your mom would sign anything if we guilted her enough. We practiced speeches. You planned this whole thing. You told us to move into the house early. You said the neighbors wouldn't care. The officer looked straight at Ryan. Sir, is any part of this true? Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I didn't think. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Daniel cut in sharply. Mrs. Carter, I advise you not to respond. Not yet. But I couldn't hold back anymore. Ryan, I said softly, look at me. He did, slowly, reluctantly, like a child caught stealing, but still hoping for mercy. I stepped closer. Why? Why would you do this to me? He swallowed hard, eyes shining. Mom, things were tight. Work cut my hours. The kids need braces. Brianna's car broke down. We were drowning. I thought if we just used the house for a while, we could get ahead. And then Brianna said, so you chose greed over me. I finished for him. His face crumpled. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I whispered. And you kept hurting me, even when you had chances to stop. The officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, we're prepared to escort both parties off the property. Mrs. Carter, we will handle the legal process from here. Brianna was led outside first, still yelling, still blaming. Ryan followed slowly, shoulders hunched, eyes on the ground. Not once did he look back. When the last car pulled away, silence finally settled over my home. Real silence. Not the tense kind, not the fearful kind, the peaceful kind. the kind I hadn't felt in months. Daniel approached gently. "Evelyn, you did the right thing." Margaret nodded. "You protected yourself. That takes strength." But I wasn't thinking about strength. I was thinking about love. How it can blind you, how it can break you, how it can sometimes save you. Later, as I sat on the porch, holding my mother's pearls in my hand, the ocean breeze felt warmer again. Familiar. Mine. For the first time, I didn't feel betrayed or abandoned. I felt free. And as the waves crashed outside my little Oregon cottage, I promised myself one thing. I'd rebuild my peace, stitch by stitch, just like I did with every quilt that ever carried me through a storm.